It's the worst mass shooting in recent American history. 50 dead, 53 injured in a gay nightclub in Florida.
I was hearing the bang, bang, bang. I thought it was part of a song. Maybe Ying Yang Twins, you know, it sounds like something they'd come out with. And then when you turn around, the person next to you is like screaming, there's blood splattering. I didn't know if it was mine or somebody else's.
Good evening. Here in Orlando, they've declared a state of emergency. Shock is setting in as hour by hour details have emerged of another act of mass murder in the US, but this time on an unprecedented scale. Families of more than 300 people who were inside the club searching for answers. Are their sons and brothers, daughters and sisters safe? Are they wounded? Or are they among the 50 people killed when authorities say a lone gunman who was known to the FBI and reportedly had sworn allegiance to ISIS just before the shooting, armed with a handgun and a semi-automatic rifle, opened fire inside the Pulse Club just before closing?
But I just want to say that we, as a gay community, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender community, are a people who love. And if you think that you're going to stab at the heart of us by doing this horrible, violent act, you're not.
The bullets he used were designed for maximum harm. Omar Siddiqui Mateen, born in America, of Afghan heritage, worked for a local security firm. Authorities say it's clear he was proficient with the weapons he chose, a handgun and a semi-automatic rifle. Andy Davis has this on the violence he wrought inside the Pulse nightclub.
Look at that, just shooting back and forth.
It's 2 in the morning. In the footage, you can just make out people running from the scene. The sound of gunfire about to ring out once more across the street.
Oh my God, they're all shooting back and forth.
The gunman is inside the nightclub, just beyond the red traffic lights. It would be another 3 hours before police marksmen smashed their way into the club, shooting dead the gunman. This footage you're about to see, perhaps filmed then, but it's not clear.
This is probably the most compelling video that I've seen.
There were 320 people in the club last night, said the police. 50 were killed, at least another 50 injured. The killing was done with an assault rifle, it was claimed today, and it was done very quickly.
I was hearing the bang, bang, bang. I thought it was part of a song. Maybe Ying Yang Twins, you know, it sounds like something they'd come out with. And then when you turn around, the person next to you is like screaming, there's blood splattering. I didn't know if it was mine or somebody else's.
As the injured were being treated on the ground outside, one woman spoke to reporters, desperate for news of her son.
But I don't know where my son is. No one can tell me where my son is. If he's been shot, if he's dead, no one knows. But they told me there are fatalities.
Before the gunman was killed, he took a group hostage, including this woman's 30-year-old son.
He's hostage from the shooter.
How did you find out?
He was texting me and called me.
What did he tell you exactly?
That the shooter has them in the women's bathroom hostage and he's going to die.
And so America woke to news of not just another mass shooting, but the bloodiest in recent memory. The target this time a gay club called Pulse in downtown Orlando. When it all happened, this post appeared on the club's Facebook page. Everyone get out of Pulse, it said, and keep running.
Tonight our community witnessed or experienced a very horrific crime. Many lives were lost and many more individuals were impacted by witnessing the crime. Many were saved, however, by the heroic efforts of the men and women of OPD.
As a state of emergency was declared in the city, and with bodies still lying inside the club, a local politician named the gunman as a 29-year-old man called Omar Mateen.
The suspect's name is Omar Mateen. He lives in Port St. Lucie. He himself is an American citizen. That's not true of other family members of his. And beyond that, right now, the investigation continues. The police very likely are checking with him and his neighbors, going through his belongings, trying to find if he left any personal statements that would indicate his motive.
Mateen, said reports, was a young father, born in New York, who'd been working in Florida in security. When contacted by NBC News, Mateen's father said he suspected this was linked to a moment when his son was purportedly angered by the sight of two men kissing. Nothing to do with religion, he's reported to have said. Some US officials were quoted as saying they'd yet to uncover any contacts between the gunman and extremists. Others that he reportedly called 911 before the shooting to declare his allegiance to the head of ISIS. Whatever the motive, what happened inside this club, said Florida's governor, was a clear act of terror.
I should just tell you where we are. We are on Orange Avenue in Orlando. We're just a few blocks away from where the nightclub is. Of course, it's a very popular tourist destination, Orlando, so we have to assume that some of the people inside that nightclub were actually holiday makers. So that is off in the distance. There's a police barricade here, as you can see. But to drive here, we passed a church where there are lots of people gathered outside. Now, these churches in town are becoming a kind of a gathering place for family members, many of whom are complaining about the fact that the hospitals aren't sending out, releasing information swiftly enough so they can check on the welfare of their loved ones. Now, just down the road from here, the governor has just been speaking. He's been trying to obviously put some parameters on this disaster, explain what has happened, what comes next. Here he is, Governor Rick Scott.
Well, this is clearly an act of terror. This is, I mean, you just can't imagine this would happen to our community, our state, or anywhere in our country. But for somebody to go in there and be an active shooter and take those men, that number of lives, any life, but that number of lives and injure that many people is clearly an act of terror. This is the time to find out exactly what happened. It's a time to pray for those that have been, that have lost their families, that have lost their lives. Pray for the victims. There's going to be plenty of time to deal with, you know, how our society comes together. But I can tell you, the Orlando area, the Orange County, the state of Florida, we're very resilient. You know, we will come together and do everything we can to help everybody that's been impacted, but also bring this community back together again.
Congress has become complicit in these murders by its total, unconscionable, deafening silence. Senator Chris Murphy today leading the calls for tough gun controls in the wake of this unprecedented massacre. There were calls too from other political leaders to tackle the threat of homegrown violent radicalisation and for unity in the face of such violence and fear. Jane Dodge reports.
It's an all too familiar scene in America. Yellow tape and flashing lights. Another mass shooting and a community asking, why us? This, the second shooting in Orlando in the same weekend.
In 2 successive nights, we've had killings. The singer performing live at the Plaza, shot down 2 nights ago, and then this horrific act.
With the gunman identified as an American citizen of Afghan descent, the local imam has called for restraint.
We are heartbroken, and it's not really time for any sensational news, just and rushing to judgment.
Hillary Clinton said her thoughts were with those affected. Donald Trump asking, when will we get tough, smart and vigilant? A more restrained response from his earlier call for a ban on Muslims entering the country. Bernie Sanders raising once again the need for tighter gun control.
25 years ago, I believed that in this country we should not be selling automatic weapons which are designed to kill people. And we have got to do everything that we can on top of that to make sure that guns do not fall into the hands of people who should not have them.
The Sandy Hook school massacre in 2012 led to an unsuccessful attempt by Barack Obama to tighten gun laws. Republicans and some Democrats blocked it.
Every time I think about those kids, it gets me mad.
In a country where the right to bear arms is enshrined in the Constitution, any tighter gun controls, even after this tragedy, will be fiercely opposed by many.
Jane Dodge reporting, and we're hoping to re-establish our link with our correspondent in Florida. But now let's go over to Kami Nzerim for the latest on the clashes which have marred England's start to the Euros.
Good evening from France, where the FA and the Russian FA have been told in no uncertain terms they could be kicked out of the tournament, kicked out of Euro 2016 if there is a repeat of the violence in Marseille. UEFA have initiated disciplinary proceedings against the Russian FA Their fans accused of crowd disturbance, of racist chanting, of letting off fireworks during the match last night against England.
First, from the Russian end, the flare. As if on cue, the incursion. Amongst the England fans, locals, children and wheelchair users. Waiting by the stairwell, more Russians.
I seen them and gearing up to start this for the charge to come on for the fight.
And then what happened?
It just all broke loose. They come forward, we all come back, they all come on top of us, and you just had to get out of the way because there was just that much force of them all, you know.
Moments later, the Russian sports minister was seen gesturing to the stands. UEFA warning both Russia and England today, any more of this, and it's the teams that could be sent home early.
It is absolutely necessary that the national federations whose supporters create incidents of this nature be punished for what happened inside the stadium and also outside.
After the game last night, there was more tear gas, more fighting in Marseille. Who is to blame?
Je blâme avant tout qu'ils soient anglais. Be they French, English or Russian, I blame the men that behaved like animals. Men who have no place in Marseille, where we were celebrating the Euro with dignity.
It wasn't the only place where British fans were embroiled in ugly street brawls. This was Nice, ahead of Northern Ireland's game against Poland.
The violence raises troubling questions. If the police can't control hooligans, what about terrorists? And what have we learnt about the threat of further trouble at this and future tournaments?
Russia will host the next World Cup, of course. But first, France and the Euros.
I think there has to be worry, and the worry would concern the Croatians, the Poles. How do they look at this? Do they take it on and say, well, we can match what the Russians have done? Or are they managed, are they sensible, and do they revel in the sunshine and enjoy the football?
For a while last night, England had a brief glimpse of what most fans had come for.
Breakthrough! I got it!
And down at the Irish pub this afternoon, they were back on song. France is hoping it isn't the same old tune. Kami Enzerim, Channel 4 News, Marseille.
Kami Enzerim reporting. Well, let's go back to the shootings in Florida, and Andy Davis is here with more. So, Andy, what do we know about what actually happened?
Well, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, 300 people in the club. There was a police officer who was working an extra duty. He was working as a private security guard at the club at the time when it's understood that this gunman opened fire. He started engaging fire with the gunman. Another couple of officers arrived. The gunman apparently went back into the club. And then we had this standoff for about 3 hours where you had this horrific situation with some people in there in the women's loo inside the club communicating with the police saying there is the gunman here, we're being held hostage. And it was at about 5 o'clock that the police decided, right, they've got to go in. They smashed through with an armoured Land Rover. They were distraction devices and they shot the gunman there. But the scene which they must have confronted would have been absolutely horrific. And at first they were saying 20 bodies, and then they came back later today saying about 50.
OK, Andy, just going to interrupt you there. We're going to Obama Live.
Who are grasping for answers with broken hearts. We stand with the people of Orlando who have endured a terrible attack on their city. Although it's still early in the investigation, we know enough to say that this was an act of terror and an act of hate. And as Americans, we are united in grief, in outrage, and in resolve to defend our people. I just finished a meeting with FBI Director Comey and my Homeland Security and National Security advisors. The FBI is on the scene and leading the investigation in partnership with local law enforcement. I've directed that the full resources of the federal government be made available for this investigation. We are still learning all the facts. This is an open investigation. We've reached no definitive judgment on the precise motivations of the killer.
We're back tomorrow at 7. Until then, that's Channel 4 News. Good evening.